Yeah, let's get this party started.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
Your papers, please.
This is insane.
Good morning.
After he's stalked, we must get rid of him immediately.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road. The only station that matters.
Thank you. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, everybody, including Laughing Girl. Tony Caravan live animation, neon flashing. You could see the lights. It was sunny yesterday, and so the solar Christmas lights, which are just my porch lights, are still sparkling. And this camera is not nearly as sensitive as it should be, so it's kind of neat if you look up see in the corner where it says camera 2 outside, and you look along, see the sparkle. That's what the people outside see. This a little too reflective for this time of the morning. My face. How about that title card? The Morning Show, The Truth, 30 frames per second with Tony Caravan. The title of this show is and will remain The Struggle to Survive and Thrive in the 20s. Against all odds, they endeavor to persevere. And there's a message there. It says ROCKFLUX, message retracted. I don't know why they just don't delete the whole darn thing. I retracted the message before the show. Right? It was my own message. I just, I was like checking the spelling of persevere. Hey, I admit it. I don't have a mastery of everything. Don't pretend to. Yeah, so what kind of title card is that? What kind of thumbnail is that? See if that attracts anybody. I mean, it's totally clean. I mean, there's nothing there. It's from a movie out of the 50s. One of those posters. We talked about it yesterday briefly. So, I also have Made with Clara's homepage on the left-hand side, which is just kind of a joke, Which actually it shouldn't be on the planet. I could probably, or should probably just move that to here, just for the sake of it. Pretend that it's Made with Clara's homepage. Oh, I have to watch that. That's the area where the live thing appears. So maybe we'll just put it around her shackles. I could do something like, I could do something like that, but then that just distorts that whole look. Elbows out by a Henry Kissinger voice today. Those lights are starting to fade. We'll let the Tony Caravan thing just happen in between. By the way, in case you didn't realize that.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
I forgot to deselect my intro clips, which I just did now. And so that was kind of a mess up on my part. So here we are. Another opening, another show. 3:55 a.m. I did not sleep well at all last night. This gallbladder thing is actually I was conscious of it all night long. I mean, it wasn't an acute pain, but it's there. I have a video doctor's appointment, but it's not with anybody from that arena. That's at like 8:15, so it's like 4 hours away. If the guy 4+ hours away. Actually, it might be 8:45, so it's probably like 5 hours. A little bit of a pain here, tooth pain here or something. But anyway, so here we are. If I take a break, I'll do a music interlude. It's a possibility I may take a break somewhere midway during the show. I say I didn't sleep too well. Don't feel 100%. May have to take a break the length of a song and a half. Of course, on a show like this, that's nothing. For some people, that's their whole video. Trying to wake up, come to grips with reality. And that's what yesterday's show was really all about. And I guess today's going to be a continuation of that. And I don't want to be, like I said, I don't think my shows have been downers. I've had some shows in which case the subject matter was kind of semi, down, one could say. But it wasn't like it was, really down. It didn't bring you down or that kind of thing. But what I do, I might play some of our songs like I found out that when in the playback, the bass, apparently my headphones and this microphone are set up like a little bit more bassy. But when you listen to it, I watch these back on TV, and I find that these songs, when you hear them, they're not as bad. So, like I say, I think I might have to take a quick break. But if I do take a break, it'll just be for five minutes or something like that. But I mean, it'll give you an opportunity to listen to some Tony Caravan original music. I'll get a copyright strike and all that stuff, but I don't care. I should have thought of this before I started the show because it's 3:58. But to restart and do all that stuff is just not, as Spock would say, the logical thing to do. I was also thinking that this thing could be moved down just a tad. Because it seems no matter what hat I wear, I'm just wearing this old New York hat, Yankees hat, that even if this thing were here, it doesn't, over-touching that thing, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, with that said, I'm going to take a slight break, and I'm going to give you my song Robots and a couple of others. Let's see. And I should be back in a short bit. Okay?
The soulless millions who wander aimlessly around the streets. Dressed as they should, believing what they've been told, doing what they think is right, acting like the others, obedient robots, controlled, doing what they think is right, acting like the others. The mindless masses following the leader, pinning the tail on the donkey, thinking chemically, angrily, chanting, religiously, watching, without independent thoughts, absent of consciousness, acting like the others, obedient robots, random instructions from viral and trendy memes, pressure by the fashionable, the entertainers and announcers, believing falsehoods and brainwashed by doublespeak, hypnotized by the cult of personality. Biological machines of complexity, with knowledge and abilities. 21st century parlor tricks for a life of diversion. Locked in time-space forever, without a chance for escape. Lost, forever lost. The indoctrination was successful. The propaganda has been perfected. The pills and potions maintain control. The soulless are now the majority. The free thinkers have surrendered, while natural disasters loom, and love has been replaced with hate. The soulless are the new. The consciousness are fleeing. The cosmic giggle awaits. The free thinkers have surrendered, while natural disasters loom, and love has been replaced with hate. Dropped my overpriced smartphone and it shattered. Surprisingly, my first thought was that I was free. Free from the virtual cage that tethers us but tears us apart. Free from the notifications, replies, and requests. Free from the need to respond. Free from the falsities and deceptions by those with warped agendas. I was no longer a slave to tech or to any person, place, or thing. Yeah. I canceled my cellular service and got a voice over IP phone. Broke the chains that bind us to a ringtone.
We're only in a virtual cage.
I went for a walk and noticed the world all around me. Sat in the sun and felt what it was like to be human again. Free from the virtual cage. Free to enjoy natural life. Free from interruptions. No longer in enslaved. The way it used to be.
Yeah, free, the way it used to be.
The only station that matters.
Well, that's that, and I'm back.
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
So, not what you don't. It does that thing still. What can I say? Lights are still a-flashing. Tony Caravan Live neon. I made that for my show back in the 90s when I used to have a show called Tony Caravan Live. Amazing. So, I think we'll get rid of that for the time being. Too much stuff going on here. Gets a little crazy. So, where weren't we? We were nowhere. But that was cool. I like those songs. Those are two of my decent songs. Robots is, musically and interesting. It's more of, I like Robots lyrically, maybe a little bit more than, the accompanying beat. But Virtual Cage, I think, is a hit in its own, if it were up to me, I would remaster it, take it back. Well, just remaster it, just look at the tracks and do some stuff. Make it more airplay ready, though I think it's airplay ready as is. But, that would be up for an engineer. Excuse me, I'm fixing my socks. That would be up for an engineer to decide. I feel much better. I don't know. So, let's see here. 4:09 in the morning. February 21st. It's President's Day. It's funny. I was looking for a Canadian flag. I was going to put one of those up on there. Remember when Poland was going through, it's a much, much worse situation as far as the strike was concerned, the solidarity movement. I was going to try to pronounce it in Polish, but I just didn't want to. Figure that's not going to work the way we want it to. So, but how there was, global support and stuff, and how much things have changed now where people are, despite what they say, they're still glued to the media, and that media includes watching social media pundits. And if that word pundit doesn't mean anything to you, because I think people are, I do think we have a dumbed down society. I'm sorry if, I'm including whoever's listening to this in that. It's not intentional. But, these YouTube people in front of a microphone who are basically just carrying stories of what other people on other media, so they're criticizing media, what they call the mainstream media, but they're reading their story and then they're just like taking it apart instead of just having original content. And then sometimes they say, oh, like this is on our website. But the point is, it just means it's the story that they took from somebody else reported. In other words, they're not doing this. I touched on this once before in another show. And it's like, look, and this is targeted at people like, from like these, like Tim Pool, and people like that, and there's lots of them. I mean, I could just go on and on. And it's like, why don't you're making money off YouTube. And so maybe instead of building some kind of crazy compound and buying another hectare of land or whatever the heck you're doing, or toys, Why don't you hire a reporter? Not just have pay a couple of people to sit around, and do the same thing you're doing, right? I mean, granted, some of these people, they're few and far between, but some do bring on guests and stuff like that, and that's a good thing. So you're making news in effect when you do that. But I'm saying, for the most part, and you know what I'm talking about, the majority of content, even on the internet, by people talking, is somehow generated by another source rather than their own, like I said, with the exception being when you would have a guest on and if they would drop a bombshell. But half the time, the reason they have that guest on is because that guest either dropped a bombshell somewhere else or got coverage, or was criticized by the mainstream media or whatever, and they're bringing them on. It's ridiculous. So, made with Clara's homepage. I know that shouldn't be on that photo because it wasn't made with Clara's homepage. This needs to find a home somewhere where it's not going to get thrown off the screen. See, I have a problem with television and it's not just my channel. And I don't know if this happens to you, and nobody comments on my show, so nobody watches it except me and a couple of random people. I think some random podcast listeners might listen to it. So it wouldn't be a factor for them either. But on a television, if you're watching on a smart TV, or if you're using a Fire TV, one of those types of things, set-top box of any kind, I've noticed that the TV stretches the screen out. It's either stretching the screen or it's like clipping it. I don't know, one or the other. It seems to me more or less that it's probably stretching it. And so what happens is the outer, I would say, 3/8 of an inch around the screen gets cut off. That's why if you're watching this on YouTube, you see, like, when you're looking at the title card with the girl with the perfect, that perfect illustration of those. Yeah. You see, I've left space around it. And that's what I'm doing that for TV viewers, primarily. And that might not actually be enough space there. But in this instance, I don't care if a little bit is cut into the thing. But yes, it should probably even be up and over it's just a tad more, but I'm not going to do that. Not necessarily. I could also do, it's also possible to shrink it a tad. Like I could do something like this. But I don't want to, because I would really, in an ideal instance, I would like that to just bleed, right off the page. And if Adobe wasn't a company, that extorted money for you to use their software that you've already purchased, I would be able to take this into Photoshop, and I could continue enough of the arm and the background, or I could do something or do some kind of framing effect or something along those lines. It would solve that problem. I mean, there's always the possibility of adding, a frame to this, which I could do with just like a black box or a certain colored box. But I'm not going to. Anyway, that's enough. That's like, what do they call that? Let's take care of business type stuff, right? You don't need to hear that,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
So what's the motivation, behind um, everybody. I don't know. I'm sorry if I seem a little whacked out. I'm just trying to survive and thrive like the rest of you. Maybe you're not. If you're sitting there and I don't know. If this is entertainment for you, that's cool too. You know, because that's part of you got a lot. You got to live, and that's thriving. Part of thriving is being entertained. Whatever this life is, this time, we're putting in here. Oh, by the way, Douglas Vogt from the Diehold Foundation put up a new video. Apparently, he was sick. He was in the hospital with the thing in the fall, and he had it pretty bad, and he's still recovering. He's up there in age, but he had a pretty good presentation, and I would advise you to see that. He has a YouTube channel called the Diehold Foundation. I mean, it sounds weird, but it makes sense. The Diehold is like, he's got this idea of almost a holographic universe, and that he ties in certain biblical things, but it's not like the Bible code in that sense. It's unique. But he's the one where I was first introduced. He introduced me to the catastrophe scenario, the 12,068 year cycle. And he's the one who explains it in detail. I mean, I don't know how many videos he has, but he has an awful lot. And he puts them in series, parts, so many parts, and parts A, B, C, and stuff like that. And he's written, a number of books over the years, over the decades. But his latest one, he's talking about the electric universe. He's talking to those folks. And I've mentioned those two people. I was kind of surprised he mentioned it. But the idea is that he does his due diligence, and he presents. This was a fairly good presentation of it's tied into this whole thing. And like I say, that's just one piece of this weird puzzle of life that we're living in right at this moment. It's that behind, the curtain, so to speak, is this, or this standing over our heads, like it's just like in a Three Stooges movie, is the sword of Damocles, which was actually in the Three Stooges reference, was a pie that was about to fall. I don't know who got hit with it. Moe, probably. And then it turned into a pie, the classic Three Stooges pie fight. Yeah. The Stooges. They've colorized a bunch of those, and they're available. I don't, free or through one of the pay services. Like I say, I got rid of a bunch of them yesterday, because there's just the content was, but I still have them for a couple of weeks because somehow they snuck in. And then I went to the store. In fact, I got to write a note on this little note, big note from the little note. And I did get the spray rubber stuff, sealant. And I put it up there, regretting that I did not put the tube sealant the day before. But the tube sealant takes 72 hours to firm up for water, for being exposed to water. And we're supposed to get rain tomorrow. So if I would have put it up yesterday, it would have been 48 hours at best. And as always, rain comes overnight, which is really the nightmare for me. And I'm trying my darndest to be strong, like just deal with it. But it's, it's that subconscious thing you have going in your, in your brain. your bioelectric brain. That doesn't make sense when we're talking about consciousness. But, it's just terminology that we've grown up with. So it's like, I don't know another way to say it. It's like your brain, your bioelectric brain is constantly, like a psychiatrist will tell you that it's self-sabotaging you. I think that's one of the most common things people have is something called self-sabotage. And what it is it's, like I say, the terminology subconscious isn't really fair to, to our consciousness, because it sounds like it's some kind of sub thing from that. And the consciousness, in my mind, is clearly separate from the mind, the brain. But for the sake of it, and like I say, it's just part of the language, and it's the way it's been approached and taught, and psychiatry deals with it that way. So whatever you want to call it, subconsciousness or your, or this self-sabotaging element of the bioelectric brain, it exists. And even though and again, using the word consciously or wakefully, when you're awake, aware, I guess that's another way of looking at it. I'm just playing with words, sorting things out, which is one of the reasons I actually do this show, is because I work out things like this that eventually I may use in a book or in something. So yeah, let's call it, if during wakefulness, as opposed to being asleep, there seems to be an element of our bioelectric brains that's still operating at a subroutine, might be a better word than subconsciousness. So if we see our brains as a computational device, our bioelectric brains as a supercomputer, which they really are, nothing really comes close to them. In the overall, when you think of it from the overall standpoint of what our brain is doing. So, because it's running, how many subroutines are being run at any given time, and in the background, right? Which is, for example, just motor function. You're walking down the street while your brain is controlling, and managing your balance, one leg in front of the other, but you're just having a conversation, or you're looking at something, or walking a dog, or, you know what I mean? Or like some people are texting, while they're walking down the street. But that subroutine, that background, program is operating their legs, and at the same time is tuned into traffic. One would hope that when they reach and their eyes, peripheral vision, when you reach an intersection, or if you're walking just on a neighborhood street, when you reach a curb, you're aware to see if there's if a car's coming or something along those lines, and whether you can cross safely. And that's just one example. I mean, the other thing is, you may have eaten 20 minutes before you took that walk or so. So there's a whole digestive process going on in the background. And, so your body's doing that. You're digesting food. You're managing to walk. You're doing something that you're completely focused on and aware of with your, several of your senses directly. And then there are all sorts of other things going on. But there may be something, like people say, in the back of your mind. Well, technically the back of your mind is like kind of where your sight center is, which is kind of weird, considering that you see things, in the light, but sight is actually conceived and processed in total utter darkness in the very back of your skull, in the darkness. It's kind of a weird thing if you think about it. But again, it's one of those terminologies that we've all been taught as children, or we've heard over the years, in the back of your mind, in the back of your brain. And that's where, and so then that comes up to this point of like the self-sabotage. So it's almost like a portion for some reason, and this isn't, not everybody suffers from these kinds of things. But I mean, it's there, it's a present thing, and it's fairly common. Because I've spoken and I've known various shrinks, head shrinks, psychiatrists. I went to a psychiatrist once when I was really young. In between I was having trouble dealing with I moved somewhere with some relationship problems. It was first this, that, the other. It was like a weird thing. I went for, I don't know, a half dozen times, and then I didn't go anymore. That was it. But I mean, so I'm aware of the experience of it, and and a lot of people do that. A lot of people do it, they just call it therapy. A lot of people do it just because they want somebody to talk to or talk things out with. And I was in a weird area because it was worse than here. I knew no one. But that's where I think I first heard that terminology. And I think it was that person that said, oh, yeah, what's going on there is it's like self-sabotage or something like that. And it's like once, in some instances, sometimes just hearing a thing explained to you, that I'm doing, or hearing, knowing that someone else, that these kinds of things exist or whatever, other people go through the same thing as you, is just enough for you to deal with it. But if you got serious problems, don't be afraid to see a psychiatrist, even if you have minor problems. So I'm trying to think how I got on that thing. I was talking about myself. So yeah, I think to use the colloquialisms, in the back of my mind, which isn't my mind, but in the subroutine somewhere in my bioelectric brain, I guess I have these underlying things going on. And they are the fact that it's going to rain tomorrow, and what kind of nightmare can I expect? And then this problem this gallbladder situation. Am I going to require surgery, or can I get through this thing somehow? I don't know, And so, it doesn't matter how strong a willed person you are or what have you. We all, at times in our lives, are confronted with things that are difficult. And sometimes we bury them in the past, or we kind of fool ourselves. That's another word. We try to fool ourselves that, I'm in total control. No big deal. I'll deal with that. But, that subroutine's still running. That's why the title of the show is The Truth, 30 Frames per Second. That's what the FPS stands for. If I didn't say that earlier, I forget, since we had that interruption when I left for 7 minutes or whatever it was. So, yeah, you have to be able to be open, talk about these things, and not be afraid to speak your mind, express yourself. What does it matter? It's like people who are self-conscious about certain things, and even when they're outside and stuff like that. Now, what you really want to watch with these lights, that as they flicker. I mean, it's still early, and they may start to die down before it's all said and done. But they have this last gasp as it gets closer to sunrise, which we will probably not see. We may or may not see, but they do this like bright flashing, a few times, which is kind of interesting. I'm talking about the lights up there in above camera 2 on the. It's like a rail you can't see, but you see the flicker. I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, you just have to. It's a struggle of life, to survive and thrive. And, sometimes we're able to come to grips with things. Other times things weigh us down. And whether it's, it's something that's on our mind all the time, brain, or mind, I guess, because your consciousness, I mean, let's face it, you're occupied, your consciousness is an occupying force of this bioelectric brain, this body. And that's why I have to deal with these things, it's like, some people seem to have the power, mind over matter. And I was talking about this Doug Vogt guy and the Diehold Foundation. And so his concept is that, and it's not his alone, but I mean, he gets into it and he talks about it in this show, and he kind of gets into some details that, are very fascinating and, would appeal to people who have scientific minds, but to just the average person as well. And the idea is that matter is, it's this question that people have, is the physical world versus, like, how did the physical world come into being? And there's many people talking about this at this present time. People have been talking about this for like a long time. But I mean, right now there's a lot of serious people with some very interesting ways of approaching this and tying it all together. Now, what Vogt does in this part 1, and he says he's got a part 2 that deals with even time travel, because somehow that would tie into this thing that he's come up with, but is that your reality, like, he doesn't, and I don't believe it either, he doesn't believe the earth has an iron core, for example. He thinks it's plasma, and that's where he's more in touch with like the electric universe people are very much into this plasma idea. But then he had his purpose of this was like he disagrees with some of the foundational precepts, or whatever you want to say, of the Thunderbolts project, which is like the electric universe people. But the idea is that matter had, we live in this materialistic world, so I can pick up this coffee mug here, take a drink, I felt it, it's warm, has taste, flavor, I'm living in the material world, I can feel pain, and I could, people get sick and they die, or have operations, all these things. People look at that title card and get all kinds of ideas, wishes. But the material world is at the foundation of it. What I'm saying is he was trying to, a lot of people can't seem to tie quantum physics with like Einstein's like theory of relativity, like classical physics, right? The physics of the, of the atomic, or the nano, going infinitely into, the smaller and smaller and smaller, as opposed to the universe, and the great expanse, right? Incomprehensible expanse. I almost thought at one point he was trying to explain infinity in this presentation, like he had a solution to that. I mean, it's interesting, worth watching. It's interesting. But he seems to have an idea that ties all this stuff together, and the basis of it is, my takeaway is, and again, he's not the only one to have gone down this direction, but the idea that it's all about energy. I mean, even you could go back to Tesla, Nikolai, and the idea of energy, So whatever you want to call energy, electricity, this would be a follow-up from yesterday, even when I was talking about, the grid and how dependent our civilization is on electricity. And we don't realize that, and it's like just in the back of people's minds. Like right now, a year or so ago, the U.S. was energy independent, and now the U.S. is basically coming up short with in energy, and apparently the main clown in office is begging the Saudis or something to like produce more oil because the price of oil's gone up, and gasoline, like I say. See, real inflation they're trying to say is like somewhere 7 or something like that, maybe 8% or something weird. But I'm trying to say that real inflation is more like 25, 30, or even higher. And depending on the items, it's like the basket of items they use, and they've been putting items in and out of this so-called selection of items that they base their, what inflation is. So, they pick, I don't know what it is, the exact items that they put in or took out. I've watched a guy talk about that specifically. But in other words, the reason that they're, a lot of people are thinking, wow, 7.8 or whatever it is, the inflation rate is high, because we're used to like hearing numbers like 3.9 or something. But it's never been 3.9, and it's certainly not 7.8 or 7 or whatever the heck. It's, like I said, if you look at the price of soil, fertilizer and things like that, the price has doubled. So it's a 100% inflation, right? I mentioned the Dollar Tree, for example. Everything used to be $1. Like they have stores, maybe a store, everything's $1. I don't know what that store is going to do. That was their name. I think there's a store out there called Everything's $1. But like the Dollar Tree was everything's $1. Was. Now everything's $1.25. So that's 25% inflation rate. That's across the board, every item in that place. And they sell food, everything. Food, candy, plates, carpets, plastic containers, glasses. You know what I mean? They have a frozen food section, holiday, decorations, candy. So everything went from $1 to $1.25. So, if you look at that basket of goods, which is, those stores are fairly big in size, it's a 25% inflation rate. The price of gas has like gone up about $1 or so. I think it's in 3 something. And a year or so ago, it was like high 2s, and now it's like high 3s. It varies from parts of the country because If you're closer to refineries or certain areas like that, the cost of fuel could be lower. But in generally speaking, you're looking at like a 33% inflation rate. So, depending on the item, when I look around and I go in the grocery store, I'm seeing a 25, 30, 50, 100% inflation rate. And they say the price of housing has got shot up. So this is real world stuff and scary stuff because it hasn't really hit people yet. It takes time. People are still getting over making their payments on their credit cards for their holiday spending and stuff like that. And people are looking forward to getting, and some have probably already got or will get soon, the working person will be getting their tax rebate, or whatever, your income tax return. They call it a rebate. I don't know. I always ended up paying in because I was self-employed half the time. But I've got I've got refund. Simple word. Rebate. Early in the morning. But so people are thinking of their refund. And so they'll get that refund. It will carry them through. So these price increases aren't going to affect them right now. Just like the poor, it's not really going to affect the poor. Social Security had a fairly decent increase this year, and they have that child thing going on where I talked about that. I'm not going to get into it in big detail again, but they're actually paying people to have kids $300 a pop. It's not it's nice effort for the poor in theory, but we had that before. That's creates a welfare state. In other words, the people are just going to be bringing more and more children into poor neighborhoods because they want the money from that they get for having that child. And this thing, they get $300 to up to age 5, I believe, but then after that it's $250 a kid through age 17. So, the point is, if somebody has 4 kids who maybe shouldn't have 4 kids, that's $1,000 a month cash they have. And remember, this is a person that already gets free food, free health care, free housing, and other benefits through the safety net that the average person is just simply not aware of. I'm aware of it because I live in, the outskirts of town in a neighborhood where that surrounds me. And this time next year, or later this year and into next year, it'll be very interesting to see the birth rate, like the jump in births in the U.S. And look at the census figures. You'll have to go through the statistics and look at it from a demographic profile, based on income, age and stuff like that. And I think you're going to find that a lot of young, poor people in areas that are where people would be struggling or aren't the greatest areas, where a child doesn't have a good chance, gang controlled areas, etc., high crime areas, you're going to see a exponential rise in the birth rate in those areas. And that's another one of those things that signal the end of, that nobody's paying attention to. And the intention is, that's what the intention is. In other words, the idea is to outnumber, if you've ever seen that like sort of manifesto that like BLM or someone had put out, was out a couple of years ago. And the whole idea was that things like classical music were racist, that education, people who were educated and had certain degrees, that was racist. People who had lived, and so the idea is what they wanted to do is they're trying to flip society so that they could basically eliminate all of culture from society, what we call culture. And and that could be totally misconstrued by people, and having just said it, I'm sure it has been already misconstrued. But if you know what I mean, like I said before on one of my other shows, just when I sit down and have lunch, and sometimes I listen to classical music. But I could also listen to Ozzy Osbourne. I'm a rock and roller, and I write beat poetry, so so I have an open mind. But see, there's still this point of high culture. Civilization, without intellect, ethics, morals, and all of those sort of things, then it just denigrates into, the torture chamber, like in my picture here, my title card or thumbnail. Like people trying to understand my mind, what I'm trying to get across here. It's a shackled woman. And it's the idea is that ultimately that what's going on right now is not going to work. It's going to backfire. And, it's already happening. We're living in dystopia. We're living in, a Mad Max society. It just hasn't sunk in to people yet because, as I said, they're coming off of the holiday season. They're coming into the tax refund season, right? And then they're coming towards the summer. They may still have some credit line on their credit cards. And maybe it's vacation season, and then people have hope because they have this idea it's an election year, midterms, and they're going to do this and do that. And so everyone's caught up in this. And then, of course, the usual diversionary things that are going on through entertainment, news, and sports and all that other crap. So it just hasn't sunken in yet. Now, for me, I've been, warning about this for years, writing songs about it, books, and doing these videos. But what's going to happen is people are going to wake up to this stuff after the election when, like I said, the pressure valve's going to have to be open to release, all this built up, the stuff they're hiding. And when that happens, then that's it. You could forget about 2024. See, because people are like trying to put their faith in the ultimate idea is they think the first phase is there's this one group of people that think, oh, we're going to save America and the midterms will Congress. Well, you see Congress is like moves at a snail's pace. And there's so much obstruction and so much weirdness that goes on. And remember, let's not forget that the media and politicians are just marionettes of the corporatocracy anyway. So it's hard to tell the difference between one or the other party. No matter, I don't care what you see on Fox or MSNBC, whichever flavor, whatever team you're on. Because that's what it is to me. It's almost laughable. It's laughable in a non-funny way. It's not funny, ha. But then they're putting their faith, will ultimately put their faith in this cult of personality, and they want a leader in 2024. But see, another thing that's going on in the background, like I say, yeah, if you have a mind like mine, I see everything. That's, it's kind of it's really frustrating to see, because I see, like I tell people all the time, I wish sometimes I was wrong. I just want to be wrong. But I just always seem to be right because I see this stuff. It's just visible. It's apparent to me. It's not apparent to other people. But what they don't realize is that since 2020, this great reset that they talk about and people talk about has been going on. It's an ongoing thing. And so midterms or no midterms, by the 2024, this great reset will be so integrated into society and culture, because that's what it is, that there is no going back. You see, it's just like I'm trying to say, you have two generations of kids who've gone through indoctrination, conditioning, and coming out of school, then propagandized, reinforced through propagandized media and entertainment, that, that they are what they are. You would have to go through some kind of crazy deprogramming thing. And that wouldn't even necessarily work. People escape from those places. And I'm not saying we should have anything of the sort. I'm against it. But I mean, in other words, people would literally have to be deprogrammed almost, through psychological, it would take months and months and months to try it. And most people, I don't even know if it would work, because because of the nature of this material world and everybody trying to have as much money as possible, and say what you will about the two-parent working society, but the idea that a mother gives up her child to child care, literally after maternity leave, that the nanny state has raised these children, so they have all these administrators who are, have psychologists working with them, child psychologists, and that they are formulating and controlling and manipulating the brains in such a way, and that's why you have a woke society today, right? And you're not going to change that. People aren't going to suddenly see the light, because it happens all the time. This, the report came out, this Durham report, whatever. Is that it? Durham, whatever he is, Durham. And it basically says what we all knew several years ago, because it had come out in hearings, but the media wouldn't cover it, that, the opposition campaign basically manufactured this stuff. They spied on, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm talking about. I don't want to get into politics of this thing specifically. It's the concept of the mind control, the manipulation, the indoctrination that bothers me. Well, it's a non-story. I mean, and it's making it on the same channels and the same spokespeople and the same congressmen or senators who were talking about it 3 years ago. Do you see what I'm saying? And so people have this idea, we're going to take back this, take back that, and then we'll do. And I'm like, no, you won't, because when you were in power, you were overpowered. Right? You're not going to. You're already, most of the people are already marionettes. in the media and Congress and, and all the bureaucracies, and you're a marionette of the marionettes, puppets of puppets. And people don't get it. And so they have this thing called hope, and it's horrible that they believe. And so what annoys me most about it, and I'm going to stop talking about those kind of semi-specific things, even though I was generalizing, but people know what I mean, is that what I'm upset about is a bunch of things. First on the list is the quality of life for people and health. I don't like the idea that they make mandates and tell people to do a certain thing, but they don't tell them about dietary things. Right? Or cure, or things that could cure or alleviate or treat. See, why aren't those things along the line with all the other stuff that they throw out at people? In other words, they're not even, that really is annoying. And that's like the biggest failure of the information age and the internet, is that the internet is full of contradictions and you can't find, in other words, it's a belief. You either believe one video or one website, or you believe another website or another video. You don't have, there's no one's basically telling you, oh yeah, if you have this problem, here's what you got to do. Well, there are people saying that, but then there's somebody else saying, well, no, don't do that. Do this instead. And then somebody still says, well, don't do one of those things, don't do that other thing, and try these things. So it's very annoying, And I don't know, So that's number one. That was like, that's a failure of society, technology, and everything we do. In other words, we're putting all of our best minds at work on things that do with like computer chips, gaming, entertainment, military contractors creating weapons of war, all this kind of stuff. That's the focus. All writers, people who have writing talent and abilities are writing about these kinds of things, instead of investigating, over 2 million people a year die of things that probably are treatable, preventable, or even curable. Right? So that's, that right there, that's it. And that's a reality. That's not going to change. And it's gotten worse, 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 worse. I've said it before many times, officially on the CDC site, the average life expectancy has dropped in the past couple of years. And that doesn't factor in this, pandemic thing and stuff, really, because we have 330 million people. So in order for, when you're talking about nearly a 2-year drop in life expectancy, less than 1/3 of 1% of the population, dying of a certain thing is not going to affect life expectancy of 330 million, of 99.6%. You see what I mean? It's just not how percentages and how those types of things are formulated. But people don't understand mathematics and things like that, probability statistics or any of that stuff. So that's another one. That's a real tragedy. So we're living shorter. We don't know how to take care of ourselves. We're being fed foods that maybe are causing diabetes and obesity and all sorts of other complications, gallstones, kidney stones. Who knows? People are having operations, dying Cancer is on the rise, right? Children's diseases are on the rise. But companies are making record profits. Our infrastructure is failing, but we're a society based on electricity. And that's how I started this thing. When I was talking about its electricity, it's, power, energy, for a better word, use of the word that physicists use. It's energy creates matter. And that's that other thing that we've been we've been deprogrammed from, is the idea that our consciousness, or our true minds, our soul, if you will, which is an energy form, right? That's the hard problem of consciousness. That if matter is created through energy, then it would follow suit that there should be the ability of our consciousness, or energy, to cure. We should be able to cure ourselves of things and improve ourselves. But that's been taken out of our brains through indoctrination and conditioning of this ridiculous school system program we have. It goes all the coal trucks, because what the temperature today? Today's supposed to be a warmer day. Let's see what it is. Yeah, it's it's 40 degrees. Today will be a fairly nice day, I believe. I don't know if it's going to be sunny. It might be sunny this afternoon, partly sunny. That's good. My cat will be happy. But, there are these certain people that have these abilities, and I guess high concentration on things, who are able to do things. I've tried to dabble in that stuff. Like I said, I have. But I don't have the concentration, because I live in the material world, like a Madonna song. And so you are constantly confronted by, the realities of a material world, that it's hard to focus, on this energetic consciousness, mind over body, the mind, body, spirit, whatever you. Do you see what I mean? Not everyone, that it's a luxury. It's like the New Age movement. It's almost a luxury for the wealthy, who also, seem to get the best health care. See, the poor get free health care, but the quality of that health care is just not that good. And it's a struggle, and it's paperwork, and it's really it's difficult. So, that's the thing. It's not just to survive, but to survive and thrive in today's world is a very difficult thing. It's very trying and troubling, and it, for many people, it's frustrating. There goes some poor. I was an ambulance going up the street. Some poor sap. I just hope I don't end up in one of those things again. And so, the things that you would think we would have focused on in the 21st century, in the year 2022, where we would be, instead of it's the torture chamber, like this picture here. And despite the fact that there's a certain, could be considered a sexist picture or something along those lines, I don't know. It's a beautiful woman. It's making a point on several levels, is what I'm trying to say with that. And if you can't see all those levels, well, I don't know. But that's indicative of modern society, or representative of things. It's like life is a torture chamber, but it's almost, it's enticing in a way, or seductive in a way. right? And so there's this seduction into our, you know, our leading ourselves into this self-made purgatories or whatever you want to call it, you know? And not to mention the other factor is how freaky society has gotten. So it also represents that, you know, in other words, the idea that we have this, whatever her name was, Jazine Maxwell, Jill Zane or whatever, Ghislaine, you know, Epstein's girlfriend or whatever, you know, that picture, you know, kind of comes to grips with something like that too. That, you know, that's part of our society too. And people just seem to be accepting of that. That thing went to the background, you know, that story was like covered. And I see there was some, Prince Andrew had some settlement and the Queen paid it or something. I don't know, something weird like that. And like I said, we see, you know, these things going on in Canada, and it seems that people are supporting, you know, the dictatorships, you know, authoritarianism. See, no matter what the protest or whatever, if it's a peaceful protest, you know, people have a right to redress their government. In the U.S. particularly, it's a First Amendment. But they've already taken away freedom of speech and tried to replace it with terms of service, which is totally unconstitutional, but nobody ever really questions that. You know, they don't. They actually say, well, they're private companies. Since when does a private company have the right to break the law? You know, they can't do it in any other instance. So but they could do it with the term of service. And so you can't redress, you know, the government with a grievance, you know, or you get banned or you get, you know, you're a victim of the government or of society. People lose their jobs. And, you know, you don't have the freedom of assembly and stuff anymore. You know? So just one amendment has been completely, just totally gutted. And the average person will like agree with, like yesterday when I talked about the climate thing, and I said the problem was the people who were disagreeing with them didn't come up with the clear arguments that they could have had. And I gave the arguments. I'm not going to get back into it. Watch yesterday's show to that part. Fast forward to what, you know, fast forward around these shows. They're long, find areas. Because I get into some interesting things in these shows. That's why they're long form, because it takes a while. And sometimes you have to work out an issue and then go back and revisit it once you start talking about a certain thing. Someone first seeing this title card with this woman on it might not have gotten that until 5 minutes ago when I started explaining what my rationale was. And that's over an hour into the show. So people tend to just go with it, and even the people who disagree with the people who are oppressing them, because that's what it really is, taking away their rights, they don't seem to have the right arguments. They don't seem to be educated or take the time to educate themselves on the situation or listen to people like me who will give them the, you know, the valid argument to make and to present. Instead, they just say, oh, this is wrong, or this is totalitarian, this is authority. It's like, yeah, that's all true, but you're just talking vaguisms. You have to get into specifics and explain, you know, you have to tear apart their argument, you know, piece by piece, and show that what they're saying is false and illegal and breaks, you know, is against the law of the land type of thing. And I don't see people doing that. I watched somebody yesterday. I was just flipping around on YouTube. Like I said, I don't watch TV news. But I, you know, occasionally will click on a clip In fact, I was just checking Rumble out before I went to bed yesterday, and there was a clip on there. There was some news thing, but it was like some person, the title was intriguing. And what they were saying was like right, but not specific. Well, we don't know exactly. We'll have to wait and see what exactly comes out in the final report, or if there are prosecutions, or if these indictments are. It's like, yeah, I could probably find a clip of the same person, same congressperson or whatever, saying the exact same thing 3 years ago. What are you waiting for? Yeah, it's like people forget that we have this constitutional republic, right? I hear, because I hear this word democracy thrown around all the time. We don't live in a true democracy. It's a constitutional republic. It's democratic in the sense that, we democratically supposedly elect our leaders. I hate the word leaders, as if we need leaders. That sounds too much like a cult, the cult of personality. But when you have this idea that the media and the politicians, work together, but that both collectively are part of the, corporatocracy, technocracy, right? Powers that be. I mean, geez, they're an organized crime syndicate. Then, that's not, we don't have, that's not democracy, right? That's dictatorship. I mean, I guess technically it would be fascism, like, kind of. But it's just all over the place, we don't know. It's like this right now, at the current time, the U.S. and many other countries in former Western civilization, because Western civilization's collapsed, are somehow a combination of fascism, totalitarianism, whatever, a bunch of isms. They're fascist, totalitarian, authoritarian, fascist slash totalitarian slash authoritarian slash, whatever, socialist states or something. I don't know. Leaning towards communism. It's like I haven't played any audio things today.
I can no longer sit back and allow communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion, and the international communist conspiracy.
This is insane.
This is a nightmare. It must be a nightmare.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it is a nightmare.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
So, what do you do? What do you do in this environment? It's not going to change. You want it to change. People say, oh, yeah, you have to have hope. You got to do something. It's like, what I'm doing? I'm trying to explain. I'm breaking down things. I'm pointing out the areas where things have fallen apart, what's gone wrong, what you could do. On certain shows, I've actually given the arguments that you could take and make. I'm out here doing stuff. I'm publishing books. I'm putting out music. I'm using every creative effort I have within my limited resources. I really don't have resources. People say, well, you're publishing books. Yeah, but I'm publishing through publishing services. I'm not getting paid for those. In other words, it's like print on demand type of stuff, or more. They're available on Amazon. But it's like on demand, You buy it, you spend $9.95, you get my latest book in print. digital copies are available, but like I said, my books don't convert well because I use graphics and different things, and that doesn't convert well to Kindle and Apple Books. Even using their own software, which I have done, and I do. But I do these things, and they're labors of love, really, because it's all my time. And it costs me, and I have to outlay money in order to do it, and I don't even ever see, I haven't seen the return. It's the same with songs. You can't imagine how much work it is to get a song. And, and to be able to set up the publishing and then to get distribution. It's like kind of a pay-to-play thing, in some regards. But I have distribution, and my music is available everywhere worldwide. So I've tried to get these messages out, I played a couple songs for you when I took that break early on in the show. So I'm trying to get messaging using what I can do. I used to even donate, when I had a couple of extra bucks, I would donate to certain people if I would see somebody who was doing something. I don't do that anymore. But I mean, I used to. That's why I get so much spam now, because I would support certain issues and things like that. Even though I could have used that $5 or $10 or $15 or whatever it was at the time. Like I said, I haven't done that a couple of years. Even though I could have used that money better for something around the house, for food or something like that. Actually, it would have been better spent just giving it directly to somebody, to charity. So, I don't know. I try to do my part, but I think, like someone else said, and I forget who it was. Actually, it was Mark Passio. If you watch his Sunday show, he really goes off this time. He's losing it. I don't mean losing it mentally. I mean, he really, he's fed up. And I turned it on, and he was on a real rail and rant. If you want to watch Mark Passio, it's, what's it called? What on earth is happening, or something like that. Just look Mark Passio, what on earth is happening, or something. You'll see his website, but he's on YouTube too. This Sunday show. But I think he was on this ridiculous rant about the people watching his show and the people who follow him not doing anything, not acting. And it's everyone can do something, but there's just too many passive people out there. And there are people who have money who think they could just throw money at a thing. Well, that doesn't work. That money goes to the advertising, and the advertisements don't work because you can't change a person who's been indoctrinated, conditioned, or propagandized with an advertisement. You see? I mean, that. Is an ad going to change your mind? No. The only type of ads that work are ads for a new product or a thing that, hey, I think I'd like that. Have you seen that ad for Reese? Reese's, the best ad I've seen lately is Reese's peanut butter cups now have potato chips inside. And the guy goes, who needs to go to Mars when we've got potato chips inside Reese's peanut butter cups, right? And they have this close-up of this, peanut butter cup. Now, I'm an old ad man guy, so it's that's a commercial, So out of curiosity, I can't eat that stuff because I'm going through this problem. I'm trying to lay off sugars and stuff. I'm not trying, I am. But I saw that commercial, and that had the call to action there. I mean, I literally wouldn't mind tasting one of those. But someone saying vote for such and such and such and such because they're going to change this and change that, people aren't, somebody on the other side isn't going to, see, it's fine for preaching to the choir, but why, so in other words, you're donating to preach to the choir to people who already know. Because the opposition, what you think is the opposition, their mind is already made up. I'll tell you right now, people already know who they're going to vote for, right? There's nobody, they always try to say, oh, there's these independent voters that whatever. And then there's these people that pretend that they're like, well, I'll make up my mind. I want to listen to both sides. That's lying. You got to get one of those people that reads body language and looks at people's eyes and dilation of pupils and all that stuff. Those people are liars. 99.9% of the people have already decided how they're going to vote in the year 2024. Okay? There's nothing going to change their mind. Not a commercial. So there's these passive people. And so people who have money think, oh, okay, I'm going to participate from the distance by going on a computer and clicking donation with my credit card. Well, that's how we got where we are, because that doesn't work. It hasn't worked. Will never work. It never did work. Then there's people that go to rallies and get behind this, that, the other. Things here in the country have gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. Right? Look, the average life expectancy has dropped. So medicine has failed us. People say, but there's all this the proof is in the pudding, as the expression goes. If the average life expectancy has dropped by nearly 2 years, that means the entire medical community has failed us. If nearly or over 2 million people a year are dying from the leading cause of death in this country, according to CDC, is still heart disease. The second leading cause of death is cancer. That hasn't changed. And heart disease, cancer, everybody's getting cancer. And the question is, 50 years ago, those weren't, that wasn't the leading cause of, second leading cause of death wasn't cancer. Nowadays you talk to somebody, like I say, everybody seems to know some guy in their family or a friend who's had like prostate cancer, including myself. Well, that wasn't the case 50 years ago. You know what I mean? So things have gotten bad health-wise. That's obvious. Not to mention this like endless pandemic. And so what's gotten good? The quality of life stinks. Unemployment, more people are unemployed than ever before. Inflation is at an all-time high. I don't think it's higher than it might have been in the 70s when this country was on the verge. Last time we were on the verge of collapse. And we never really recover from these collapses. We just get further and further, down. And you just look around and see that, our infrastructure is totally failing. Like I'm saying, the only thing that people can point to as advancement is say, look at my computer, look at my smartphone, look at my HD smart TV, right? Or my refrigerator that like tells me what I'm low on, smart appliances and stuff. They're all electric, and the grid's in such a bad shape that, man, one of these days you're going to wake up and it's just going to be light out. You're going to go reach for your phone to text your friend, and you're going to find out that your phone's not working. And you're going to go into the bathroom to brush your teeth or whatever, and you're going to like turn on the light and the light's not on. And like, hey, what the? And then it's like, it'll be like in that movie, War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, everybody go out their front door in their robe looking around. And it's like, yeah, none of us have. Say goodbye to Bitcoin. That's digital currency. Say goodbye to any kind of money you have in a bank and your ATM card. Right? That's coming, man. And it's either coming because of like a natural disaster, which many people are predicting and have the hard science to support, or just because of decay and neglect. We're at that time. It's like a convergence of two things. One, one is the fact that this seems to be a cyclical thing that happens every 12,000 years or so. But two, we've been this, like I mentioned it yesterday, we've been a reactive society instead of proactive. So we've allowed our infrastructure to totally fail. And yes, some of the elite out there have these houses with geothermal systems or solar panels and different types of things like that. There's certain people who will do fine. But the vast majority, hundreds of millions, I would say 2/3 of the country, it's just going to be a Mad Max dystopian world. And it's probably going to begin. Well, it's already begun. It's not being reported. But it's going to be very apparent to everybody like this time next year. And at that point, it's over. In other words, House of Cards fallen, it's over, no recovery. There's no recovery from it. Because the smash and grabbers and the opportunistic looters and stuff like that will just go on a rampage. We're 3 days away from like the end of civilization as we know it. Because I'm starving. People don't know how to cook. People don't have traditional families and, gardens and, and all that kind of stuff. So those who are prepared to survive will survive. A guy like me, I'll survive. I got a garden if I get to it, if I could stay healthy enough. I don't know. I don't know. I feel okay. I'm going to talk to this other doctor today, but he's not a doctor that specializes in the problems I have. And I know what he's going to do, recommend me to go to something. I just don't feel like it. I ordered some homeopathic thing. I'm going to try taking some of these things to see. I'm going to keep eating a healthy diet and hope that I could stave this off. I've said it before. I've said the only reason it's probably keeping me alive is eating garlic and broccoli and certain things like that. And yesterday I didn't eat garlic, and last night I didn't feel well. It's like I missed my garlic. The garlic is like the stuff, the antiviral or anti-inflammatory that's been helping me. Because I don't pop aspirins and stuff. Because I had kidney stones. I've had everything, because and my liver is attached to the gallbladder, and ibuprofen and stuff like that. It's no good for your liver and kidneys. Doctors have told me that. So anyway, hopefully you weren't offended by that beautiful woman there. I didn't mean it to be like woman in chains. I'm saying women are in chains. We're all in chains. And that the problem is we're being seduced into slavery, into chains. So that kind of it might be a little bit too deep for some people, right? But in a gallery, maybe you would someone would understand what I was trying to present there. Anyway, Good morning. I think I'll end it there with that. And like I always say, visit ROCKFLUX.com. The site will eventually grow if I survive, thrive. Otherwise, they kick me off here. I have a Rumble channel, and they're my most recent books, Then What and Codex. Get the print versions. They're cheap. Great Solar Stuff has stuff that's not just solar panels, but if you scroll down, there's just power backups. In this cold weather and this kind of stuff, if there's a power outage, you'll be able to get through it for several days until they get it back on, hopefully. And then, of course, there's links to my wear. You could get a hoodie, a shirt, a cap, a bag, sticker. You get a decal, rockflux.com decal. Put it on something. Spread the word. Anyway, until the next time, take care. I hope you're healthy, happy, and have everything a good life. Cheers.